So I'm Dr. Allison Arnicrons. This is the non-traditional student panel presentation. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited about this group, and thank you so much to our panelists, all former CMU chips. So thanks for your time and efforts and just preparation to be here today.
How did you balance academic responsibilities with personal and professional obligations during the program? What worked or didn't work?
One of the things that worked for me is one, I do have a good partner in life who helped me with my family. I am fortunate that the school district I work at was very supportive. So they allowed me when I was done teaching, as soon as the bell rang, I got in my car and I made it to Mount Pleasant for my classes. It takes me 50 minutes. I'm in Pinconning. I had wonderful professors who were always understanding that I was not a traditional student in the program. And to keep up with my balance, because as a teacher, I have a lot of grading, lesson planning, and I had, other stuff going on. Sundays were my day. Like Sundays, I sat at my kitchen table all day. And I just devoted that time and always tried to stay ahead of things. So um, that's kind of how I did it. And I always counted down instead of thinking this is going to take me 3 years. I thought of it as I broke it down into semesters, right? So this is 6 semesters. Now I'm down to 5. Now I'm down to 4. So kind of chunking that up and getting my mind right that I can do this. So that's what worked for me.
I was far enough in my career and I had a job at the time that allowed me a little bit of flexibility in working my schedule around. It was a global job, so I had to manage it around a lot of global travel. Um, so that was difficult. I think there was a semester or two that I actually took off, didn't do anything, or maybe took one online class through CMU's global campus to be able to work around work responsibilities related to travel. I can't recall exactly the number of classes I took each term. But my intention initially was to try and get through the program in 3 or 4 years. When I retired in 2018, that opened things up and it was a completely different chapter working on my degree. One was it actually allowed me to persevere and continue taking the additional credits to get the degree under the KCREP certification, which seemed daunting at the time, but looking back on it now, and I think even through Dr. Arnicron's guidance, I'm glad I did it. I had the option to, go through and maybe graduate in 2018 or so, and I stuck it out. Glad I did that. The other part is, living in Midland, it was about a 45-minute drive into campus. The far majority of the classes I took were in person, which, just as it is with me with counseling clients, I gain a lot more out of being there in person versus online, but I understand also that doesn't work for everybody. But for me, it was nice to be able to make that drive over so I could actually leave work, decompress, put the corporate work behind me, and then arrive onto campus and be ready to do my 1 or 2 classes I would have that particular evening.
We're going to move on to question 2. What challenges did you face during your practicum or internship, and how did you navigate them? Start with Christy.
So let's see. With practicum, the challenge was that I was selected to do play therapy, which I don't know how that happened. I think because when I came through, I was the only one with a teaching certification, and my emphasis was school counseling. So I think that's kind of how it worked out. But I'm really thankful that I ended up getting to go that route. I worked with a couple of clients who were 8 years old. And I don't think the professor that I worked with is with CMU anymore, but it was really great to have somebody who had a background in play therapy. So today, having my own practice again, and I did do some private therapy at a neuropsych's office in Midland for a number of years, and worked with kids. It was really helpful. So that was kind of challenging though, because I'm a high school teacher. I work with 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. So that was a new twist for me. And then as far as internship, that was a little bit of a challenge as well, because I could not financially not be at my job, right? So what I had to do was negotiate with my principal and my superintendent, and I had to find a voice that I now know I have, but I didn't know I had at the time, which is to negotiate for myself. I had to have a meeting and said I need to do internship, and I would prefer to do it here at my job so that I could continue to teach. And at first, I got pushback, and then I said, well, then I guess I will have to, take a year off. And I didn't want to have to play that card, but I negotiated it. And they went, we don't have to do that. And it worked out for me. And I was like, okay. So they went from giving me a little bit of time, 1 hour to fulfill my internship, to I spent the last 7 years doing 2 hours and teaching. And now this year, I negotiated, I'll stay and I won't retire, because I could have retired last year. I'm full-time counseling. So, but that's how I did my internship. I was really thankful that I could stay in my job and continue to work, because that was very important. My family needed that. So
I did my practicum on campus, and I thought that it was a great opportunity to not only like see face-to-face clients. We did some telehealth, but being able to discuss cases and present cases was something that was I think very beneficial for the group. Again, a lot of the things for me with the challenges was just having young children and being able to coordinate their schedules, my schedule, my work schedule, and my husband's work schedule. And so just having a calendar for everybody to look at. And another bonus is I could ride my bike to the practicum site. So it was really easy if I had to, go home between clients and take care of something and then go back up.
All right, thank you guys so much for sharing. We're going to go on to question 3. There can be a lot of personal growth through a master's program and working in the mental health field. How did you navigate personal relationships and friendships when it feels like your growth is moving in a different direction than others you care for? Let's start with Christy.
when I read this question, I thought, wow, what a great question. Because I definitely think doing a program like this is just good for the soul. Like it just changes you. And we know our profession is so important, and it's just such a blessing to be a part of it. And I don't know. I was shared the last question. I said I found my voice. I think through this journey of working through the program at CMU, which took me 3 years to get through. And then even afterwards, it's not done. I hate to say that and make it sound like scarier to some people, because you still have to work on getting your full licensing and taking that national exam and all those things. But it's been such an amazing journey. And so it changed me definitely for the better. And because it changed me for the better, it made me a better mom. It made me a better spouse. It made me a better daughter and, sister and family member. And made me a better teacher. I just became more understanding of others. And as far as when you think about like people in your life who may not be progressing, one of the things I think we learn as a counselor, we have the tools to help others. So, I mean, we don't change others, but just by working with them and, being ourselves and how we're growing, the people in my life, I think they would say they appreciate it. I know my kids do. I have 3 adult kids that are all over at Western Michigan. So sorry, they're Broncos, but so was my husband. So that's where they chose to go. But my kids will still call me and just say, Mom, I need to check in for a moment. And I love that I can be that support. And maybe I would have been that anyway as their mom, but I think that having a background in counseling definitely helps to help the people in your life just be, better. It's been great. But what a great question. I don't know who came up with it, if it was you, but it was a good question.
Yeah, because I would say some of the experiences that I had in some of the, like the first counseling class I took was taught in a very like self-developmental kind of way. It was the lifespan class, but it was taught in such a way that every class period we had some time at the end to kind of circle up and talk about ourselves and our how our own lives are going. And man, that pulled me in. And I did feel like there was a lot of growth happening in me through the program, which, like Christy, I felt the benefit when interacting with my kids. I definitely felt like it helped me be a better parent, more understanding, more patience, less just kind of controlled by my emotional reactions to things, and what I had observed growing up and all that. I remember one time sitting on the kitchen floor with one of my daughters, talking through something that was going on for like an hour, and then she was like, "So this is like what you do now, huh?" And I was like, "Yep." She's like, "Well, I can't remember what she said. Something like it was helpful, or that was good, or something." And I was like, "Oh."
When I read this question, it had me think for a good while on it. But I think my biggest thing for growth was the counseling hours that you have to do in this program. It truly was a saving grace for me at the time, just with, the balance of life, work, school, and then having someone to talk to who was non-judgmental. Plus, my third semester in this program was the hardest semester yet for me due to my grandpa passing. But going and talking to that person and counseling helped me and, helped me sort out with myself of like, keep pushing through. Like, this is something that, grandpa would want you to do. Like, don't give up because of this, push through. I definitely feel like personal growth wise, I became a better me. I definitely have more of an understanding that, everyone's dealing with something. We might not know it, they might not show it, but people are going through things. And I think being around people in the program who were very like minded and able to kind of collaborate and talk with. And it's still something now too of we reach out to each other, check in, how are you doing? I know it's still exciting, we're all still new in it and just being that support still for each other like we were during the program.
Yeah, I agree. This is a really good question. And as I reflected on it, kind of looking at it through a different lens on the two-part question. First, as far as personal growth, I was embedded in a separate career where I felt like I had become the subject matter expert and went into this master's program just validating why I went into the first place. I loved the classes. I learned a ton. It was also an interesting experience being in a lot of these classes in person with traditional students. So these, students were my boys' age. That was kind of a insightful experience. From a personal growth standpoint, it was really good for me to be immersed in that, not only going through the classes and learning, but also being amidst, the diversity in the classes. Some things were eye-opening. I remember actually in Dr. Arnekron's class, I don't remember which particular one, but we started the class by giving pronouns, and I didn't know what in the heck anybody was even talking about. So it just kind of showed, my naivety as, I guess some people would call me, a white privileged male going into a new curriculum that really did open my eyes in good ways. Second part of the question, I would say became more of, you become so informed, and as you go through practicum and internship, you start to really feel like you are, knowing what you're doing per se. But it became a little bit of a challenge to, and hopefully this is the case for everybody, knowing where you stop being in that counselor mentality and just being a person and not trying to evaluate everybody in your life, right? That was kind of a challenge for me as I moved through the program and graduated and got into the counseling profession, is kind of have to decipher not being that counselor person all the time. So that's always, for me, looking back, what was a significant challenge for me when it came to personal relationships and friendships after spending 6 years in a counseling program.
Question number 4. Describe some of your experience post-graduation. Possible areas to address. Did you have any difficulty getting licensed and securing a position? What have you noticed about the profession itself? What professional organizations or associations have been most beneficial for your career development? And some tips on job negotiation strategies or considerations.
My journey, so like we already know, I'm in the schools, and so as far as licensing, one of the reasons though I did pick the school is or picked counseling. I wanted to be able to do it in the school, but also outside of the school. So it was important to me to get my full licensing, and I was very fortunate to, right after I graduated the program, I was back at CMU for something, I think to pick up something I had left there, like a portfolio. And I ran into Dr. Arnekrantz, and she said, "How you doing?" And we just had a quick conversation, and she offered to be my advisor so that I could get my licensing, which I love that. So thank you to her. I got a job working evenings, a couple nights a week at a neuropsych's office in Midland. And so I did that to help with those hours so that I had the clinical experience and not just the school experience. And then, like I said, I worked with Dr. Arnekrantz for a few years as my supervisor until I could get my full license. So I stepped away from the clinical setting for a little while to get my son through high school. And then he graduated in this past spring. And so that's when I started renovating and opening up my own practice here in Pinconning. And so started seeing clients in my own practice here for the evenings in November. So that's kind of been my journey. Like, my goal is that when I decide to fully retire from public education, which I'm not sure, I've got an idea of when that might be within the next few years here. My goal is that I will do the private setting in my own practice and kind of set my own hours, which will be nice. As far as organizations, if you're a school counselor, ASCA is a big one, right? There's a lot of great areas if you work in school.
So professional organizations or associations, that is an area of weakness of mine. I was interested in that when I was going through the program. I was a CSI member and an ACA member, and it was a little bit cheaper to be a member when I was a student. And then I've let both of those drop off since I graduated. Just got busy with work. But now that I am kind of on my own in private practice, I want to get back into that in order to maintain connections with other professionals, because that was kind of built in when I was at agencies, but now that I'm not, I need that. So, and finally, negotiation. Let's see. Really just do it. That's my main thing. I think I've done that at each of the professional jobs I have taken. It's just like they're not going to retract their offer. I've never had that happen to me. I've never heard of that happening because you try to negotiate. If they've given you an offer, it means they want you. So there's, the worst that they can do is say no. And just remember that, some places are kind of budget strapped, and so maybe they don't have a lot of room to negotiate on salary. But if that's the case, you can try negotiating on hours, remote work, training and travel budget, stuff like that. So
What I've noticed about the profession itself, school counseling, what we're expected to do as school counselors, or like the broadness of like what you're supposed to do kind of thing. My position is more so that social regulation, but I've had to put my foot down and be like, my social regulation and my groups are more important than a behavior, getting called for a behavior. We have people on our staff that's specifically their job. They're behavior people. I am the social emotional. I'm the one that comes in at the end and we talk about, okay, so how are we feeling? You know, like it's okay that you felt that way, but remember, we need to take belly breaths. We need to do this. We need to do that. Just kind of those closings. Professional organizations, ASCA has definitely been something. And then tips and strategies and considerations. Definitely one of those that I've dealt with here lately is the strategy that I myself have done of collecting data, writing that down, the notes I take and stuff. And I think that just comes from the training that we've done as counselors, and kind of being put on the spot of, okay, well, let's see your data for your groups. And I had it, and I think they didn't expect me to have it, kind of thing. So, more so, like Christy had said, finding that voice for yourself and like standing up for yourself when you need to.
I did not have any difficulty getting licensed and securing position. I had more interviews than I could count and really had kind of my choice of what was going to be the best fit for me and my family. Again, from graduation until licensure, it was for the limited license, it was about a month. And I think that's just because when I submitted my last document, they had already done the review for the month. And so, yeah, it's really 2 to 3 weeks. That was for, and if you graduate in December, it seems to go faster because I had somebody at my internship site that did that. And then a member of ACA for sure. The biggest challenge with the other ones are, just staying current with the information. And a lot of the journals and things are online now versus print copies. So that's been beneficial. And then I am nowhere near an expert on negotiating strategies. Uh, Again, with being a veteran and having retirement already, I'm just happy to be able to work anywhere and not necessarily have that barrier of working in a position that I don't like because it pays more versus working in a position where I go to work every day and I'm excited to be there and happy to be there versus dreading being there. And so I'm consider myself very lucky to be in that position.
Looking back, some of you a little bit further back, is there anything you would have done differently in your graduate journey or any advice for current counseling students?
If I could have done it differently, I probably would have chosen the route that Craig did, and which is stayed in the program a little longer and put that what at the time seemed like no way I can't do a couple more semesters. I was just exhausted and ready to be done. But now looking back, I kind of wish I would have, because when you have to pick what route, and I chose school emphasis for obvious reasons, but for example, those people in the space that have a background with addiction, I didn't take that class, and I don't really feel this pull to want to work necessarily directly with that population, but it was very naive of me to think that way, because obviously you work with teenagers who struggle with substance, and I work with a lot of teenagers and middle schoolers whose parents do. So I really feel like that would be one of my, like, if I had a do-over, I would have maybe stuck around a little bit longer to finish out some of those areas and add that to my toolbox.
I actually kind of wish that I had figured out a way to take the family class, like this children and family, because I didn't take that. I wasn't doing the school concentration, and I've worked with a lot of kids not at the methadone clinic, but at the tribe. I worked with a lot of kids there, and didn't really have a choice. Like, it was just, we saw kids down to maybe 6 years old. And I've just always kind of felt limited by not having had that training. And becoming a play therapist is a whole big process that I've, not done. So, anything else? Plan for practicum being a more intense semester. I already said start applying for internship sites really early. I think it's helpful, especially as a non-traditional student, to like get really clear on what it is that you are like, how you're wanting to use your counseling degree that you're going to get, like kind of what you think your focus is going to be, and really try to focus your experiences on that rather than just saying yes to every opportunity that comes your way.
I feel like the only thing differently I probably would have did is been a little more like mindful and just been in the moment more during the program. I think I was just so get it done, get the degree, get a job, but that's also something that was drilled in my head since starting school. Um, Advice to current counseling students, like I said, just be in the moment. Actually, like take the time to realize what you're doing and how great that is, and also to take care of yourself.
So my advice to, any students on the call here today thinking about it, just kind of follow your heart. There's always going to be challenges. It's going to be difficult. There'll be setbacks along the way. I thought I was going to be in school forever, but you'd be amazed looking back how quickly it does go by, whether it's you do it in a few years or you do it in 6 years, 7 years. Central Michigan turned out to be a great program. The location was ideal for me. The professors at Central Michigan were fantastic, so I wouldn't rewrite the script any different way than it happened.
And I think on some of the times where, I'd taken the 2 classes during the semester and had a lot going on, both personally and professionally outside of school, I wish I would have maybe reached out to professors a little more. I heard it several times, it's not undergrad anymore. We understand that people have lives and, we don't know kind of like what's going on. And some of the professors were a little bit more understanding than others. Um, but I think I just had that mentality of, okay, I can figure this out and I can do it. And so I wish I would have maybe asked for help a little bit more or asked for an extension to turn in a paper that was of better quality versus just turning in what I had done. And so I found through this program that communication is everything. And so, it wasn't something that I was doing once a week, every week, or even every class. And so it would have been, I think, easier and I would have had less stress on myself if I would have just reached out and been more informative with the staff.
Fantastic. Thank you. I want to take a minute sincerely to thank all of you who took your time to be here today, especially our panelists who gave such insightful information. And I kind of wish there was something like this set up 3 years ago when I started, because I feel like my mind is put a little bit more at ease. So I hope that those of you who attended were able to take away some really good information from this. And thank you everybody for being here and for having a really great conversation today.